So I've always been in like a house hack from the beginning, right?
Dude, and that's huge. I mean, this is pivotal because you're in 2017 and you're living the house hack, because real estate's just a time thing. It's going to go up in value. It's just time. Welcome to the Unfollow the Herd podcast. My mission is for you to become the 1%. So if you're ready to break away from the pack and become the 1%, then unfollow the herd and let's get into this. Today's guest will be a good one if you are trying to do one of your first real estate deals. It's a young guy who's done literally house hacks. He's done flips. He's built tiny houses on wheels. Guys, I think you guys will get a lot of value from this if you've never broke into the real estate game. And he's an aspiring architect in the making, which I know we're like right on the verge of some tests that are going on. He's in the middle of them. Let me introduce Connor Riley, and it's Connor E.R. Riley, just so you know if you're typing it into LinkedIn and trying to find him. So, Riley, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to sharing my journey and a little bit of who I am, and it's cool to be hanging out with you.
Yeah, well, I know you as someone who reached out for some mentorship, and we got to work together obviously the last like 8 weeks, and I don't know if we're on week 8 or 9, but whatever. And now we get to sit down and do a podcast, and you're a local guy. You're Fargo, North Dakota, which is awesome that you're able to reach out. And I think you found me through LinkedIn and reached out, and Connor's a up and comer. He's going to blow some doors away very soon. I mean, this guy moves quickly with any student I've ever worked with. But like, how's the journey been? Let's just talk about the mentorship a little bit and what we've done, where we started with that. And then I want to kind of back up into your story. Like, when did you reach out for like mentorship? Like what caused you to do that? What was your purpose to doing that? Why would someone do it?
Yeah, I think the big thing is New Year's resolutions have somewhat, went down the drain for most people. And I'd say the timing wasn't necessarily New Year's resolution, but it was just how things kind of timed out. I got married into August, went on the honeymoon to Punta Cana, which was amazing. And I got pretty bored, to be honest with you, after a whole week on the beach, which is
I went to Punta Cana too for my honeymoon.
Did you?
Yeah.
I've heard it's a good place.
Yeah.
We met a bunch of other honeymooners on the plane too, which is super cool. And it's good to see. Yeah, it's good to see people getting married as well. But yeah, after that, everything, kind of calmed down, get a little bit of a break between that and planning all year. And then it was just like, well, the best time to start is now. And that ended up being kind of towards the beginning of January. And so, I'd been following you a little bit on LinkedIn, and we have some we have connections, in the area. We're local. Yeah. And so I saw that you were doing some coaching, and so figured I'd reach out and see if I could get on the list. We did our discovery call, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. And I'm like, I'm all in on this because it's betting on myself. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to ever put money early on. I mean, I'm still fairly young, obviously in my 20s. It would have been a little different maybe a couple years ago because I was so deep into real estate for the year and a half. Yeah. But yeah, the money to be able to get have a coach, mentor for the first time. I mean, it was nerve wracking, but I think it's crazy thinking back to when I was sitting at my computer. I'm like, I'm going to send this guy some money and we're going to start meeting once a week. Compared to now, it's just like two different people. Yeah.
I remember when I started doing this mentorship, I was going to do it for free, and I tried, and these people were like, I think they just wanted to talk to me from LinkedIn or something. And it's like, it was a complete waste of time. There's always a dollar value to investing in yourself. The highest return you're ever going to get, no matter what they tell you, will be an investment in yourself. Whether that's, going to college, you learn things, being an architect, you've paid money. But if you really want to search for a mentor that's a couple years in front of you, not 30 years, don't talk to grandpa. It was way different when he was doing stuff, right? Like reach a couple years in front of you. I think it just causes you to take action. When you look up to people that are a few years in front of you and you're like, there's a different level of accountability than saying, hey, grandma, like, here's my goals. Can you like keep me accountable to doing this? It's not, you know, there's not as much pressure where if you're working with a high level, you know, entrepreneur or someone doing things that you want to be doing, even for myself, I invest hundreds of thousands of dollars into that, unfortunately. So it's not unfortunately, it was always my best investment, you know, and getting around those people, getting the connections, being able to partner. You know, we exchange phone numbers. You know what I mean? Like we'll do a deal one day, you know, and I think that in mentorship, that's not talked about enough. And I think it, like I said, causes people to be uncomfortable and take a lot of action. And you are very good at that. But go back to like, you know, how did you grow up and, you know, how did you get into these real estate deals? I wasn't a part for that. You've done more than most will ever in their entire career. How, you know, how did you start up? Where did you grow up at?
So grew up in Morris, Minnesota. I guess the first part of my life. I have like two parts of my life until about 10. I was in Morris, and then Olivia, Minnesota. It's the corn capital of the world. And it's actually got a big corn cob, and then it's actually in the airport, which is pretty cool. So we just have a bunch of, you know, farming, agricultural businesses, seed companies. But yeah, we moved down there. That's where my mom's side of the family is from. And so, you know, I wouldn't say that I grew up poor, but, you know, we didn't have a lot. And so, you know, a lot of it was, you know, relationships with family, and that was kind of the big driving factor to most of my life always. And obviously faith and whatnot, all the small town, typical things that I think a lot of us Midwestern people can all resonate with and be similar. But in that aspect, I guess my biggest thing was growing up around the family construction company in Morris, Minnesota. That I'm just still so early on in my life. I'm trying to track down all those answers to the questions. Like, how did I get to where I am at 26? You know, what really drove that? And then I think back to, you know, what family might have impacted that, entrepreneurial wise and motivation wise. And I, you know, just based on what I've heard from, like my grandparents and stuff, has just always been who I am and what's been ingrained in me since I was a kid. But, you know, back to the growing up around the construction company, my daycare was riding in the back of the excavator, which I always love to tell that story because it's right above the, you know, heater in the back. I can still remember some of those experiences and having a shovel in the hand and, you know, acting like I'm a foreman on the job site, you know, a little guy riding in the dump truck. So a lot of that, it's kind of like a missing part of my life. On a more personal note, we won't have to talk about it too much, but just based on who I am, and I believe is going to be one of the bigger things that really drove who I am today, my maturity level, my drive for success, and then obviously like my family orientate, you know, being oriented to family. Is my dad died when I was about 10 years old, super tragic, and, you know, sudden. And so that's kind of why we moved. We stayed in town for a little bit, for a couple of years, and then we moved to where my mom grew up, which is super great because there's kind of a break. But there's a lot of things I forget. Really good times when I was growing up too, when my dad was around. But you know, a lot of that really, I mean, it's the biggest. That's got to be the biggest driving factor. And I think then obviously I was blessed enough to have a great stepdad, still do. He came into my life a couple years after, and then life just kind of went on, and I met new friends, and, you know, you're busy with a new school and a new, you know, a different town. And it's like you leave a whole life behind and then you start fresh. And I guess the biggest thing that I've always loved to do is woodwork, is, you know, working with tools, and that really starts the story where, when we moved to Olivia, we were able to they bought a farm site, with a big block shop. And so I had tons of room to do whatever I want inside there. You know, you pick up a hammer, I started with, cutting down dead limbs and making them into things.
Yeah.
Nothing super crazy, but I did make a pretty sweet chair once. And then you start working with, more dimensional lumber. And so I my all the way to like when I graduated high school, my graduation was in the shop, and we had put, I made a table. I made this. I made the thing that we hung the football jerseys on and all that stuff. So yeah, I think to preface like where I came from, it's very, very much similar to a lot of people. And I think that's an interesting thing to note, because what I'm doing now is it's kind of like, I have an old life, and the life I'm living now is crazy. To think that how far I've come since I was, just in like 2016 when I graduated in high school.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah. What caused you to go on, like, you lived a very normal lifestyle. It wasn't like you had a wealthy family to help carry you into your first real estate deal. What made you you left high school, you were in carpentry, you did this construction skills, and what did you want to be when you left high school?
Well, I was pretty good at math.
Okay.
In high school. And I forget, my mom reminded me years later that I was math student of the year for my small class. But let's just Olivia, Minnesota is like 3,000 people maybe. So my graduating class was 60. So not like anything super crazy, but so I thought I was going to be an engineer. Oh. And I had a lot of sports injuries. So I played football, baseball, basketball, and then I ran track senior year instead of baseball, which is super great. I highly advise anybody who is interested in track to try it out when they're in high school. It is just super fun. Yeah. Team sport, still competitive and solo, but I had a pretty bad hip surgery junior year, and I missed football. I was a running back. I was super small. I mean, I was only like $175, and I'm like 245 now. So pretty crazy. I'm happy in my dad bod now. Yeah. But still, obviously not the typical dad bod, right? I'm okay with a gut, but I have one. Yeah. I'm working on it. But yeah, so I thought I was going to be a biomedical engineer, and I liked math. I'm like, okay, well, then there was a bit of a problem, because I'm like, I like to work with wood, and that's what I really like. And I like houses. And it's interesting you asking just these questions here. It's bringing up some other key points that happened kind of around that senior year mark. I was at my grandparents' in a smaller town adjacent to Olivia, and there's this really crappy house. And so I'm like, who owns that house? And it's vacant. And my grandpa's like, well, the bank probably owns it. So I like blew my mind to start as a, senior. And so I was like, well, can we buy it? How do we, who do we talk to? And he's like, hey, well, look, and, my mom didn't, my parents ended up not letting me do it, but my grandpa ended up buying the house. So I think to answer your question, not to talk about the architecture side of my life yet, and NDSU and stuff, just to delve into the real estate side of things. It's definitely what I think sparked.
So you saw this house, and you were just curious? Yeah.
It's like, I didn't read any books. I didn't, I was like not on YouTube or any of the modern day stuff that obviously that's what I learned a lot of how to build and construction methods and all that stuff. A lot of my information comes from there, after I graduated, but yeah, I can't really pinpoint exactly what made me curious about that house. Okay. But we ended up buying it. Oh, wow. And I got to work on it a little bit, and it's like beautiful, and they're going to die in the house. I mean,
they rebuilt it for themselves.
Yeah. I worked on it when I could come back on the weekends with him. And, it's a stunning, project.
That's awesome. Okay.
And so, they sold their other house. They moved in this one and downsized, and, I'm going to probably have to go build a ramp for them soon, which would be super cool. And I can already see it, design wise. Yep. But yeah, after that was kind of like interesting, a dream that was crushed, from my parents, and not to, I love my parents, and I think that's maybe something I can resonate with other people. just having parents that maybe, they just want the best for you. They don't want you to take unnecessary risks. They're only going to go based on their experience. And that's what, just going against the grain in that way the whole time, ever since I graduated, including the time. Yeah, I've been going against the grain. Yeah.
Okay.
Compared to what they kind of expect for me. But
I think that's key too, though. Because most people are going to take advice from their parents.
Right.
And if you would be in a different spot, probably. Yeah.
It's it's hard. It took a long time, and even now, it's still a struggle to not get their approval on things. Everybody wants their parents' approval. And so everything I was wanting to do never had an approval. So, and that was, don't get me wrong, not to talk bad about my parents. It's just, they don't know any better. And I'm just going to be the guy that doesn't go according to what the book says I should do. But then again, I also did. So that's a very interesting, we can delve into the college aspect.
Yeah. Right.
So just background. So this is going to kind of put me on a different level. And I wouldn't blame anybody for, considering that maybe I had a head start. So I didn't necessarily start from scratch. And I don't know if I've told you this, but when I was in high school, so I had played, all the sports, and I also started working. I always worked in the summer. So, all the way back to early days in Morris, we'd rock pick. I don't know if have you ever rock picked?
No, I was the concrete kid.
Yeah, sure. Well, you've heard of it though, obviously, right? Well, my wife had never heard of rock picking, up to this last year.
Yeah.
And so we do rock picking. I worked in the fields, doing that. And then I ended up working in the fields doing we had the jobs where you could do soybean and corn pollination. So you got the test plots. Somebody has to go, bag them and do all that. So that's what I was doing all summer. And then as soon as I got my license, I was able to I got a pizza delivery job. That was super awesome.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it so much that I would do it now if I had to.
Wow.
And so I did that. And then what else did I do? Worked on, I did side projects all the time. Me and my buddy did some side projects and
it's funny that not many people know, but I worked at Perkins, washing dishes. That was my first W-2 job, outside of construction. And you would go in at 5 a.m. and the pans are wedged between the ceiling. I swear the the cooks or whatever come in early in the morning and they just make your life miserable. So you're scrubbing everything burnt on or whatever. And, but today, now I can wash dishes very quickly. And I know the best method because I did this job for 8 months, basically waiting for the construction season to start. I never went back to washing dishes. That was a one and done deal. But I think you learn these skills when you're young. Rock pick, no matter what, you enjoy them. And it's it doesn't make washing dishes that miserable now.
Well, and then you understand that you already kind of did the time.
Yeah.
You don't have to do it again.
Yeah. Well, hopefully not.
And then you can be the parent that's well, I had to do this when I was a kid, so now you should do it.
Yeah. That's a whole nother story.
Right.
Kids do not listen, apparently.
Yeah. Well, see, and I don't have kids.
Yeah. Right. Mark does. It's a whole nother way. I wish they did.
Yeah.
I'm going to make them get a job so then they can appreciate those skills too. But no, keep on going, man.
Well, and that was the other job I did. Every Sunday, or maybe every other Sunday, we worked at the local small town diner where we, I waited and did some dishwashing, mixed the coleslaw, did all that, it's very small town stuff, which is so great. But yeah, and then I guess we can go back to how I wanted to become an architect, I guess.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Because I was going to be an engineer, and then I was well, I want to work with wood, and engineers don't work with wood. And I kid you not, I looked up on YouTube what an engineer really does. Because a lot of people, small town, there's no architects in a small town. No. And so I didn't know any architects. Just to be clear, I did not know any architects. And it's not until second year of college that I had remembered that I had an interest in design of a floor plan of a house, so housing, because my parents had built a house, designed and built their dream home prior to my dad dying. So I remember back, I had, I feel like everybody has maybe their childhood girlfriend or whatever.
Yeah.
We were, and this is like when I was really young, but I remember like taking a bunch of pieces of paper and taping them all together and like making a floor plan as it got bigger.
Wow.
And I would love to find that, but I don't think it's going to happen. I just don't know where it would have went.
Exist?
I think when we broke up, I ripped it all up, most likely. But
gotcha.
that, it's just funny to remember back then. It's like, okay, well, yeah, that was like the first time that I'd ever wanted, like, design something and thought like that was so cool because I was around all the guys building it. We're on site. We did a lot of the dirt work with the construction company. We pulled up a granite rock the size of a minivan that's still in the yard, and we put a flagpole in it. But yeah, I was like, okay. And then I looked and I was like, okay, well then that means that, architects work with wood. So I should do that. And that was as simple as it was. I'm like, I'm going to be an architect.
Wow.
And, yeah, well, and I should say before this, let me go back to what I was saying, not to like keep bouncing around, based on like how I didn't start from the ground up. So, what I was trying to build up to is I had worked the entire time and I knew I was going to go to college, but I didn't know how I was going to pay for it. I guess that wasn't really I think a lot of people don't think about that. But that was the expectation. We're going to go to college, and I'm the oldest in my family. I have two other siblings, now three. I have three siblings, a 12-year-old sister from my stepdad and my mom. And so it's just great. I'm 26, she's 12. And then we have my brother's 21. And my sister's, I think she's like 23, 24 right now.
Okay.
So a good spread.
Yeah.
But I'm the first one going to college. So, I got to lead the way, but I had no idea how to pay for it. So, it turns out my mom had taken some of the insurance money from my dad's death and put it into some, like a college fund and another, CD or whatever. And it had done pretty well because he died back in 2006. So I don't know if that might've had, maybe a good time for
probably not in 08, but like, yeah.
Yeah.
After that, it's pretty much been a bull run.
Yeah. It did pretty well. And so like I'm 17, 18 at the time. And she's like, hey, you actually have like some money. And I'm like, what? Like way too much money for a kid my age. And we can talk about this too, because like later on down the line, all three of me, my brother, and my sister, we all have different like strategies.
Okay.
I spend and take risk and actually like put it towards investments.
Yep.
My sister hoards it all. And my brother spends it all. It's super funny because we're all out of college now, so we can actually see the results of the fruits.
So
of
this
the
was
labor.
enough money to pay for college?
Yeah, so it was enough money to pay for college, at least my 4-year degree.
Okay.
And an architectural 4-year degree is like, I don't know, 80, 90 grand. It's not cheap, but it was enough to pay for that, and then it was enough to have like my mom called it a nest egg. And so when I found it, this is a big thing. When I found out I had this money, I'm like, okay, our one thing that we decided as a family is like, we're going to be like responsible with the money, obviously. But we're like, okay, everybody can have a nice car, like a new car. My dad was a car salesman. He did the construction business, the family business for a while, and then sold his shares and he sold cars. So like he was like total gearhead. Mm-hmm. He didn't really work on them, but he just loved cars and sold cars his whole life. And that's kind of like my whole family. My grandpa, my cousin, and him. They all sell cars, which is super cool. I just never got into it. Okay. But I think I always thought it'd be fun to maybe.
That'll be a hobby thing one day.
Yeah, maybe I can sell. Yeah, that's what my grandpa does now. In his retirement is he does. He has a small dealership at the shop. But yeah, so when I found out I had that money, I think that was kind of maybe I could buy that house. I think that's kind of what triggered the idea. But I had no idea about real estate. Never read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Still haven't.
Okay.
None of that. So, but once that happened, then it was like, okay, well, I can't do that project because I like projects. I think the big thing was I wanted to go from, I never like built with dimensional lumber in terms of like a space. I went from like woodworking to like, hey, I want to put my hands to work and actually build something that's of scale.
Yep.
And so, yeah, so, you know, deciding to go be an architect, go to school to be an architect, I suppose, go tour NDSU. First time I ever saw an apartment building, toured the campus a couple times, and, you know, it was great. NDSU was great. It was the closest one. There's not many, accredited universities that do like a 5-year program. And NDSU does that. So 4 bachelor, 1 with a master.
Got it.
And so, yeah, just, I mean, ended up going up there, and the first year of college, the big thing, I was just trying to find a project. And so I had some money, but I wasn't going to just like spend it on a ton of stuff. And obviously there's like a huge weight off of there. And that's where it's like, you can take lessons from me, but there's not many people that had that big of a jump in terms of a head start.
Oh, sure.
You know, new vehicle and having money to pay for college. But I still think, if I hadn't had all the experience in my youth and had worked through school and whatnot, and I knew about this earlier, it could be a different story. But knowing myself, I don't think it would have been.
Question around that. So did you? 3 kids had all the money did your mom just dictate, like you said, okay, college is what I'm going to be doing. It's going to be probably this, like. Or did she push you like, you're going to spend this on college, or like you 3 kids are all on 3 different paths?
I mean, we all ended up going down the traditional path, but I think about it now. I could have just taken a penalty on withdrawing the college funds for college, and then use that money and the other money to do real estate, just all what I'm doing now.
So she wasn't pushing the traditional. That was she was.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, she wasn't telling you not to go to college, but like, if
she wanted us to go to college, but like if I wouldn't have wanted to go to college, like I know there's quite a few, more entrepreneurial, you know, there's just a bigger percentage of 20-some-year-olds that are, you know, smarter than I was at the time. I wouldn't trade my education for the world.
Right.
But that also is an opinion that I don't have a ton of student debt.
Right. Absolutely.
And
you had a new vehicle. You had some things that maybe other students, it seems like though, you flip the script is kind of what I was asking, is that your mom she's dictating where this money's going to your best interest, right? Like, which is going to be the traditional route that they know. You have the new vehicle, but I think you understand the value of the money a little bit differently than I'm just, you know, your mom's just like, I'm going to pay for college, I'm going to pay for a new car, and then you're on your own. Or something to that nature. You know what I mean? Like, it just, sometimes when, like I do with my kids, I flip the script of the value of money instead of just going to the concession stand and buying, you know, they buy the 2 Powerades and the, you know, all the bullshit. You give them $10 and then they, you know, tell them you want 5 back, and then they try to like spread it.
Sure. Yeah. That'd be very interesting.
You know what I mean? So it just like, it flips the script for you. I think your mom did it right in that it showed you the value of the money. You're trying to probably figure out how to, I mean, at that time, a great new vehicle and college paid was like, it's amazing.
That's everything.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I'll figure it out in 4 years what I'm going to do.
It's interesting though to like remember back to kind of how I felt. It's not like I was like trying to show off my new car or like be this guy because I have money. You know, it's like the small Midwestern, and that's a big reason why like my family, I will be having and raising kids like in Fargo or in the Midwest just in general, because we have family. And I think there's just a lot that we learn in the Midwest that maybe not a lot of the other places in the country learn.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it was just weird. I mean, it wasn't like anything like I felt superior, or I was, you know, obviously knew that it was it's a huge shock that it's like real. And I was the first one to know about it.
Sure.
Up until 17 or whenever, you know. But yeah, I still went to college. Still, you know, I wanted to get a degree in something. I guess I wasn't like tied into the entrepreneurial aspect of life. But the project that I ended up finding is like, I want to build a tiny house on wheels. That's where that comes in. So
your architect mindset was telling you this, or was this an investment, or is this just a place to make money?
No, it was
a hobby.
It was pairing like finding a project where I could actually like live in it, because I knew that I wasn't going to want roommates to an extent.
Okay.
It was like finding something where I could put my money in as an investment. Right. I knew that if I built it myself and paid for materials, I knew it was going to be worth more because my labor is not free.
Right.
Right. And so I knew, and then I wanted a project. I always have projects, love projects.
Yeah.
And now they're obviously more business sided projects rather than building projects, but the real estate was a huge, I mean, whatever I learned in the tiny house, going from woodworking with sticks and then, just some, select 1x4s and stuff like that, building those things. I mean, that I knew nothing about plumbing or electrical or like how to frame. I mean, I was like Googling like how do I frame a wall? Like 16 on center, how do I frame a header?
Yeah.
It literally started from that. So I think a lot of it was the focus on skills over money or status or anything like that. It was still like, I want to go learn more. So there's college, and then there's also like the tiny house. So that was like the really big pivotal moment where I wasn't going to do it because I had control of my money, but we still kind of had an agreement where my mom would kind of have to, she was still on the accounts. So she kind of had to prove it. But I wanted her and my stepdad's approval to order this trailer, because you got to order the trailer months ahead of time.
The frame and the wheels.
Yeah, because you can go pick up 2x4s and
is this like conventional, like for an ice house?
No, this was like a custom tiny, like drop axles. It was 30 feet long and 8.5 wide. So, I mean, it was a pretty big trailer. I mean, you need a big truck to pull it. So, but that kind of during school, then I was like, okay, I want to frame the walls. And it's funny because I did like prefabrication. So I built the walls on the ground, and then I stacked them up, and then I put them on the trailer, and we drove them up to where I'd be building, which was closer. My aunt and uncle's house, up in Barnesville. But I built the walls like in the winter in my grandpa's shop down in Morris, because I could drive down there. But yeah, so it's like putting my money to work and actually like having a project. And I knew that if I was going to be doing architecture stuff, I'd want portfolio pieces. But yeah, it was just really just to build something to live in, because I was going to plan on living in it for college, which I did for like 2.5 to 3 years.
Yep.
But yeah, once I got to college, I had money, so I didn't need to work. Right. But I was so bored because I was getting my schoolwork done that it was like Christmas. Well, a couple months before Christmas, I called my parents. I'm like, I literally get all my work done. I have, I'm used to working and doing sports and all this.
Yeah.
And I have nothing to do. And they're like, well, you should get a job. I was like, yeah, I'll get a job. So I went and applied to Shields. And that's where like all of my Shields taught me a lot. I've met a lot of really great people, customer service.
Oh, sure. Everyone should learn that.
Yeah. It's a great place. Like I would love my kids to work at Shields at some point.
There you go.
Early on too. But yeah, so I got that. And then, so I was full-time architectural schooling. I was working at Shields part-time to like 20 some hours a week.
Okay.
And then I was building the tiny house. This was really interesting.
What year of school were you in?
This was freshman.
You were a freshman in college.
College, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and it was interesting because if you look at it from like, okay, I committed, I got my parents' approval. I ended up getting the approval to order the trailer. I remember that exact moment, and so like I committed to doing this tiny house. So now it's like I'm working, I'm doing school, and let me be clear, the architecture program, like just because you want to be an architect, like it's a long time before you can. I'm not an architect yet. I'm 26. Right. I guess I will be very soon. I think that's still pretty early, but there's no guarantee you're going to get in the first year. So like freshman year is like, let's weed people out.
Yeah.
Is this really what they want to do? And then you have to have a certain GPA to get in for second year. Yep. So what I think back is like, I was doing a tiny house, I was working, and I was trying to get good enough grades to get into the architecture program. So I had friends that didn't make the cut.
Oh, boy.
That I knew in freshman year and had to move to Minneapolis.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like tossing myself into the fire and knowing, based on what I've learned growing up, it's like, when you commit to something, you got to finish it. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to give up on it. And obviously I have money invested in it, but yeah, that's essentially the beginning stages of like what was then to come from then until now.
Okay.
Kind of thing. So
got it. And you made it through, well, obviously you made it through college. Did you live in this tiny house, by the way, in your sophomore, junior year? Or?
Yes. Yeah. I lived in it.
Where did you put it?
In a trailer park.
And you hooked it up to utilities?
Yes. Yeah. Cause you build it. Anybody who's ever looked into tiny houses, you could do compost toilets or whatnot, but you still need to like shower and stuff, obviously. Yeah, right. And so you need water and sewer. And a lot of people think that they don't need that, or they don't think about it, or they think they can just find a septic system that's randomly somewhere. So I thought I was going to maybe like live outside of town more. And I looked and I had this thing I was building and I could not find anywhere to put it. So I had all this money into it. I mean, back then it was like 25 grand at the end of it that I put in materials only. And it's probably, it's probably be like 35 or 40 now with the economy and how the market is. But you have all that, and I'm like, okay, then I need to actually like find somewhere to put it before the school year starts for sophomore year. So it was like summer of freshman, summer before sophomore year. I had to find somewhere to put it so I could like live somewhere. So it was just a wild year to think back to it. You go from like starting school. So I'm coming from a small town and now I'm in Fargo. So that's crazy. So that's a culture shock. I was also like a hardcore Catholic. From small town Olivia, Minnesota, right? So I was like button heads with people, like then there's a problem with like, that's a whole nother conversation, like finding a church and doing all that stuff. And then I started working, and then I was building the tiny house. So, I mean, I would have a studio time where I'm like, hey, I'm done with my work. Can I leave early to go build my tiny house? And they're like, what did you just say to me? You're going to what? I'm like, yeah, I'm building a tiny house. Everybody thought that was so cool. And a couple of my college friends actually helped me like put up the walls, like stand the walls up.
It's amazing you lived into it. And like, so I guess everyone wants to know, like, did you sell it and make a profit?
Yeah. Well, that now basically helped fund my really high risk investment year.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
which we're kind of coming to like after college time, like you graduate well. And I know you're still in architect, or you still got some tests left, but you're very close.
Yes.
We're knocking on the door.
And it's like, it gets pretty simple after the tiny house gets done. The first year of college was kind of like that like all the things happening, all the new experiences and all the risk. And then, even to the point where it's like, I was one of the only ones in the entire dorm, in the dorms during like Christmas break, because I had a job and everybody else went home. And so I was like, that was crazy to have that experience and not go home because I had to work. and then, I could build a tiny house on the side and do all that. And then after I was done with freshman year, I had to find somewhere temporary to live because I didn't have the tiny house finished. And so then I moved into some temporary like college, higher education housing on campus for a few months. And then I moved into my buddy's apartment, which he was coming to live in for that next year, but he wasn't going to move up in the summer. So I lived in there and had like my mattress on the floor, and I didn't have any Wi-Fi, and I used like a little hotspot, and like, it's just like crazy. But to like move past all that, then I eventually got into the tiny house, and it was just kind of like a work in progress while I lived in it. So I've always been in like a house hack from the beginning, right?
Dude, and that's huge. I mean, this is pivotal because you're in 2017 and you're living the house hack, because real estate's just a time thing. It's going to go up in value. It's just time.
Yeah. Right. And risk and like what conditions are you willing to put up with?
Yeah.
And like me at like 19 years old, 18, 19, well, I'll put up with anything. I mean, it's fun.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah. Going on, like doing like camping trips or anything like that. I mean, it's just kind of the same. It's just like you're doing everything without the comfort of like the home.
Right.
And I think that really gave me that next leg up to be like, okay, I've kind of already done this, but I kind of forgot.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then, and then the rest of college was kind of normal. I lived in a tiny house, and then I was just kind of focused on my schooling and working and doing side projects if I could, a couple side projects. Yeah. Whenever somebody would ask, or I could do I did my a cabin design for my aunt and uncle at the lake, sure. which was super cool.
Yeah. Well, so you got into a house hack a bigger one.
Right after graduation.
Right after graduation. So was that planned? Like you already were looking and were you just curious how I can keep going? Or did this thing just pop up and you're like, dang?
No, that's an interesting question. Because I'm just like...
Because most people sitting on the sidelines right now and they're like, okay, well, I didn't get a bunch of money after college or during college, so I don't, but you still built this tiny house. Like you could have just lived in the dorms, did the thing, waited till college was done, and then what, right?
I could have also had a nice apartment.
Right.
I didn't have to work.
Right.
I think that's where my experiences, regardless of the insurance money and the college being paid for and whatnot, I had people who had college paid for that I went to school with, and it's weirdly a class about 60 in the architecture year when I graduated and whatnot. But there's a lot of people that didn't have a job, and they should have had a job, or maybe their parents are paying for it. So it's there's still that aspect of the world that I saw, but it's I'm working and I have money and I have a nice car and all this stuff, but I'm still doing the things that I need to. That's kind of smaller Midwestern mindset.
Yeah. We like stuff in the Midwest. The more stuff we have, the happier we are.
The bigger space we have.
Yeah. We like 6,000 square foot homes because that's just the way we are in the Midwest, right. And it's more affordable here.
Yeah. But living in the tiny house for, during college. So essentially then there's kind of a rapid succession of what had happened then. My thesis year was then COVID hit.
Yep.
And I did my thesis online.
Okay.
So I had decided that I was going to move out of the tiny house. I was going to move into I was living in the tiny house, and then I had a buddy at the time who we had started talking about maybe buying a house and redoing it. I can't remember how that really went, but his grandpa was retired. And so that was my first stint in private money. Right.
Got it.
So I'm like, okay, we could find a house. And I started doing more research, building out a spreadsheet. Oh man, Mark, you're getting me thinking now. Even so I know that. Yeah, I know exactly what that was. So I had, I was still living in the tiny house. I had, now needed to get an internship. So I was going to leave Shields and go work for a firm, for a licensed architect.
Okay.
And so, I had an art teacher in high school whose brother, he had told me, oh, you're going to go for architecture. My brother's an architect in Washington.
Oh.
You should go work for him when you're old enough.
Sure.
And so that's what ended up happening. I reached out to him. I said, hey, your brother was my teacher and whatever. And I need an internship, but he lived in Washington State, in Seattle.
Oh.
So I ended up, he connected me through the Rotary Club. He knew a guy who had done, foreign exchange students.
Yeah.
And so he's like, you got a big house and you got a room that you could have this kid come, and he's going to come work for me. But I couldn't afford it because I was paying lot rent for my tiny house.
Oh yeah.
And so I lived for free in Seattle for the whole summer, which is super crazy. It's small Midwestern, kid, driving out to Seattle and working for a guy I've never met, and living with a guy I've never met. Living with him
and working for him.
Yeah. So all that's a whole nother story. I mean, I met some great people, great friends, in that summer. And then I also, right before I left, I had met my now wife. And right before I left, a week before I left. And so we won't get into that, as much as I'd like to, we won't get into that, but but yeah, what sparked it was there's a guy who still works at the firm that I was at. We'd sat kind of across or next to each other, and I remember we were talking about real estate in the way, and I'll never forget it. He told me, I'm pretty sure it's exactly kind of similar to what I'm going to say, but he's like, the goal is that you could buy an apartment one day, because I think he has a condo. He had a condo that he was renting out, and he told me, and I was like, I can't. I'm like trying to wrap my head around that. You can do that. You can rent out a space and you live somewhere else. It's just really weird to me. You know, you never really think about it until you kind of see it more personally like that. And he's like, yeah. And the goal is that you need to buy an apartment building. And once you get an apartment building,
this guy read Rich Dad Poor Dad.
He had to. I should ask. I haven't talked to him in years.
So he's inspiring you.
Yes. And I'm like, what? An apartment building? That's crazy. What? Like, I don't understand how that's even possible. I can't wrap my head around owning an apartment building. And so that sent me on a wild goose chase, because I'm like, okay, I've been creative in my tiny house, living in my tiny house. What other creative options are there? And so I was on Craigslist looking for houses, and there's a guy on there by the name of Eric Stewart. So you can look him up. I think he's been doing a little bit of YouTube stuff. And whatever. He's a really great dude. Yeah. So he does that. Real estate's kind of his, like, he does a lot of real estate, and his real estate has been able to fund him and his wife's lifestyle to just like kind of go travel the country and whatnot, which has been super cool for him. But he had a fourplex that he started in house hacking too, with this fourplex, and he still had it. And he put an ad, a Craigslist ad, that was like, you can buy this house kind of like seller finance style, and you can live in one unit and rent out the other three. And I like read through it, and I contacted him, and so it was just
wow.
Yeah, it was wild. I mean, that was what really like triggered the learning aspect of me wanting to do that. It didn't work out. It didn't end up working out, and I can't, obviously there's probably a lot of reasons, but I was still in school at that time. That was earlier, before, that was like third year, like when I was a junior.
Yep.
And then I went back, lived in the tiny house. And then, so I think that was obviously what had like sparked my interest in real estate. So I had been looking at houses, and then I found one, and then I found the partner, and then I found the money. Right.
Okay.
Which is super interesting to think about now. That's kind of how that works. So then I went from tiny house to room in a house, and we had remodeled. We like got the whole thing, like redid everything. I mean, it had like no shower, one bathroom, one bedroom in the basement, and like there was like a little 3x3 shower or whatever, smaller bathroom, but it was a basement, like low ceilings. And then there was one bedroom on the main floor and two on the upper floor. Older house, kind of central, like, sorry, Jen, stomach. But yeah, so I did the whole architect thing, redesign the floor plan, because there was no shower up on the top floor. It was just a tub with the slope ceiling. And so I redesigned everything, and then we got the money from his grandpa. He bought it all cash, and then he funded the materials, and then we got paid for our labor, and we just like treated it as a business. So we did that for a while, but then that was the first time I had lived with people, and it was the worst. I mean, I had to do my thesis during this time too.
Oh god.
Doing my thesis, it was the worst. College, a bunch of college guys living in a house, like not my thing.
That's getting renovated?
That we were renovating at the same time. So I was like, thesis, working, renovation, come from the comfy tiny house into a room where like the living room is right there. I mean, it was like a horrible time in my life. Horrible. So then I moved in an apartment for 6 months. Moved into an apartment. First time ever in an apartment.
Yep.
And then after that, it was like, okay, I'm going to buy my own house. So that kind of leads up into your question. I'm going to buy a house. And then I knew about the guy with the fourplex. And so I knew that like owning a fourplex would be way better than a single family. I wasn't trying to do it for comfort. It was going to be for investment.
Right.
And it's like, I know I've been saying this a lot, but it's wild. It's wild to think how recent that was. Like how much you can really get done in a year.
Yeah.
And so, I took whatever money I had left. I partnered with my brother in a way, so we could like like, you know, because at that point I didn't
Did
really
you
have
the
much money.
Yeah. Did you have the money to buy it, or did you just start figuring out how to buy it?
No. Yeah. I mean, I got like a traditional like 30-year loan.
Yeah.
I went to the mortgage broker. But yeah, I didn't have like very much money left over towards the end of college, because I was to the point where like even when I was working, and I'm sure a lot of people can resonate with this, when I was working part-time at Shields, full-time at NDSU, obviously,
Yeah.
it was kind of like that agreement that I wouldn't be using my money. Like I worked, it's an interesting thing. Like I got my college paid for.
Yeah.
I put the money in the tiny house, but it was kind of like I knew that I was not going to live off of this money that I got from my dad.
Yep.
So I had whatever I worked, you know, I still lived like a college kid. It's just I drove a nice car.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'd like call my mom earlier, you know, during college. I'm like, hey, like I just like am still short. I just don't have enough money to like pay all my bills. And so, you know, then we supplement a little bit of the dad's money that was in the account. And I did that like all of college. And so, yeah, it was like really interesting. It's like it's a crazy character builder. You take anybody who is not used to having much, and you give them a brand new car, and then you send them to college. Like making friends with a new car, and you're not that guy. Like that, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, it's kind of like that unspoken question on all the people you meet.
Gotcha.
Like, are you like this rich kid?
Yeah, right.
Like
right.
your parents buy
Your
this
parents
for you?
Yeah, paying
it's
for
like,
everything.
well, technically, yes. My dead parent bought it for
right,
me.
Right.
So yeah, it's like the money went to the tiny house, the money went to the car, and then you know, there's a little chunk, and then obviously the living expenses. I got loans on my thesis year of school, which I, you know, still have.
Yep.
And, you know, like $20,000, not a whole lot, but I couldn't imagine payments on the full amount.
Right.
But yeah, I didn't have much. I didn't have enough to put a 15% down payment.
Yeah. Right. To buy the fourplex.
It was super, super crappy.
So how did you end up coming up with the money through?
So I took whatever I had, and then me and my brother kind of did it together.
You figured out how to get the money to get it down.
I borrowed some money.
And then you did the renovations. Did you have enough money within the loan, or did you out of pocket as you could get stuff?
Yeah, I bought it for $175. So it was like listed at like 182. I got them down to 175 because, you know, you got to work the deal a little bit. And then I had no money to do any of the renovations, and it was like a crack house, really bad.
Oh, no.
Like existing tenants.
Yeah.
The whole house is just really not upkept. It's actually 1890, if you can believe it.
Oh, wow.
That's when it was built. I mean, it had like watched downtown Fargo burn down. That's how old it is.
Wow.
So it's pretty close to downtown. It's a good location, but it's just really crappy. But there was enough parking, you know, surface gravel parking.
Okay.
Which is awesome.
Yep.
Parking is everything when you're downtown,
Yeah.
especially in general. Like it's on the corner of University and 2nd Avenue.
Got
if
it.
anybody's curious.
There
it's
you
a
go.
big blue house.
Okay.
I think it's green, but I guess maybe a little colorblind.
It's blue.
But yeah, so what I did, I got really creative. I had to go find a bank to take a chance on me. And for some reason, I don't know how this worked out, but I thought, you know, I don't have the money to do the renovation, but it's going to be like a big renovation. I mean, it started at like $80,000 I thought was going to take to do it.
Yeah.
And that was like, the scope was very low. I mean, just like kind of cosmetic stuff for all 4 units.
Yeah.
But I ended up doing like $250,000.
Renos?
Yeah. In Reno.
Wow.
Yeah. Huge.
This is intense.
Huge, but I didn't have any of the money to do any of that. So I was like, okay, well, if I can just get a mortgage and then go in and just live in it, you know, my apartment, and then I just like live in one of these units. I mean, it was still a good deal. I mean, my mortgage was maybe, I don't know, like $1,100 or something, whatever the numbers were. That was like lower rate too. And, I was like, you know, I can rent these for $500 a piece, so I could still make like $1,000.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, it was obviously factoring a bunch of other stuff, but it was a pretty good deal. It's just really crappy. Everybody had been passing on it, but I knew that I wanted to own. It was kind of like the fundamentals of like what I want to own in my life and the person, an investor I want to be. And so I knew that I wanted to own nice remodel. You know, I'm not going to be the architect that owns a bunch of crappy, what's the term? Slumlord housing.
Slumlord properties.
Yeah. So I got creative. I went to a bunch of different banks and I was like, hey, I need a construction loan. So usually they only use them for, I don't know if you know this, but you can do construction loans if they're big enough and you get a bank that's comfortable enough to give you the money to do remodels on existing houses.
What were you pitching them? Because you were like out of college and like no one co-signed. I mean,
no, nobody co-signed for me.
So
it's crazy.
Conventional bank, community bank, credit union.
It was a border bank, and that's currently who I have my loan with.
So they bet on you.
Yeah,
and you gotta realize that when people always think like they're debt to income and all these ratios, and it's like, here comes Connor with not a lot, but he needs a lot, and here's the property, here's your plan, and they got to read your integrity. How long you haven't been with this bank long either. It was a new relationship.
New relationship.
So
it's really exciting.
Most people don't understand that, but like in the Midwest, at least I know here that it's very much a relationship. And if you have a good banker and you keep them, they will bet on you, even when your criteria doesn't quite meet probably all their board needs. Of course. Anyway, you keep going.
Yeah, relationships. Yeah, that was like it was so wild. It was so wild to be bet on, like they bet on me totally.
They bet on me.
I mean, that like to give a postgraduate with not a lot of money. I had the house. So that's where I would like focus on the biggest thing. And this goes for anybody. It's like have control of the asset. If you don't have control, you really have no say.
Right.
What are the odds they would have given me a construction loan? And I'll explain the creativity in it. And it's literally by God's hand that any of this worked out. It's all God's hand because it shouldn't have worked out to where it is now. And so, they bet on me and we did like an as completed appraisal. So get this, I was also going to the local real estate meetup, Facebook, you meet up once a month, the first Monday of every month still. Okay. And I knew about that too with like with Eric Stewart, and he was a part of that too. And I was going, I'm like, okay, I'm going to buy my first house. I'm this newbie. I don't have much money, but like I'm going to try and, just go get it. And I was explaining that I bought this fourplex. Great. Now I'm going to do a huge remodel and I'm going to get a as completed appraisal and I'm going to do a construction loan on it. And they all were like, good luck. That I've never heard of that before. Like, let me know how that goes for you. And it went pretty well.
Dang.
It went pretty good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I had to put in the work. I did like a ton. Like I just posted about it this morning on LinkedIn actually, and just kind of talked about like all the work that I had to do behind the scenes. And I just like went off grid and just put, I got the opportunity, I had the money, I had to learn how to do the draws. It was a commercial building. Anything over 2 units is commercial in Fargo. Mm-hmm. So I had to have permits. I had to put a permit set together, redesign the whole thing and get it permitted through the city. Then I had to hire, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. They all had to be licensed contractors. So I couldn't do any of that myself, which I had in the past on other projects like my tiny house, that remodel and whatnot. And so, I had to deal with grown men I'm this kid that's got this fourplex. I'm hiring all these guys to do so much work. And I built some really great relationships with some of them that I still use today. And really, it was just like betting on myself to like see what I'm actually capable of, because I've kind of prepared myself in small increments all the way up until this point. Right. But I'd never really known, like, could I actually grind and put in like the work compared to the tiny house into something that's bigger, like a real house. Right. On my own.
I think to come away from that, like if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, wow, he probably was doing just fine coming out of college, and then he throws everything on the line on a fourplex. That's just what you got to do coming out of school. I think even when you were in school, you were pushing the chips all in. Why not? Like, why not bet on yourself during that time? Why not take some risk? What were you going to do? Lose the fourplex? I mean, you know what I mean? Like you would rebound from that. If you're 40 listening to this and you want to put your family in one of the units in the fourplex, you might have to do some serious convincing if you have a family of 5. Right. But, you know, it's just showing that, like, take the risk on early, like Connor did. And, you know, that's when you can take the risk. That's when you have to take the risk. I'm still taking risk at 35. I'm not willing to move my family into a fourplex, probably because my wife would probably put her foot down on that for good reason. But, you know, I'm still pushing chips in and investing and betting and taking on risk. Why not? Everyone else sitting on this, you know, 99% of people are going to sit on the sidelines and be like, everyone at this real estate meetup that you went thought you were crazy. Yeah. You went in, like, here's my plan. You must have been a great, maybe you are a car salesman at heart, because that banker, you sold him. Her. Or her. And guess what? You know, now you have a relationship and everything went fine. And I'm sure you went back to this meetup and be like, I'm doing it. Yeah. It's like, now we're done. Yeah. You live there. You still live in a unit.
Well, and like you said, I think in the intro, that I move quickly and, you know, I just take action. I mean, that is like the pivotal thing that you can do. Just like start doing the thing. So you can talk about it, you can research it, analyze, overanalyze. Yeah. Like it felt so good just to like take the risk on myself and just go do it. And I learned far more than I ever could have in any other experience. And I think that's like, to the younger viewers or listeners that are maybe thinking of like doing some real estate. See, the thing is, like, I had skill before I did the fourplex, but I didn't have skill, you know what I mean? Like that kind of skill. I mean, like there's like a callus that you need to build by just doing that thing. And then I don't want to do it anymore. Yeah. I did it.
Well, if you would have went back and do another one, say you find another fourplex, you know, like a whole different process. You're like, okay, don't do this, don't do that. But you fail, you know, you didn't fail. You probably had some mistakes.
Oh yeah. Totally.
You didn't like have a mentor like guiding you through the whole build out process, you know? You probably wish you did, you know? It's like, looking back, maybe I would have.
Well, no, I mean, not necessarily.
But you learned a lot.
Because you, like, getting into something like that, it's, you know, everything is like purpose driven, and like, what's the reason that you want to do something like that? Because if it's just to like passively retire or like live off the money that you're making off of whatever the project is, it doesn't really work. It doesn't really work like that. Yeah. And so what really drove me to like do what I did at the scale I did was like the learning that I could do. It's the management skills that I learned. Yeah. And that's what I really want to focus on is I learned, you know, really as just in terms of like, I was like a boy before I started. And I had my girlfriend at the time, now wife, obviously. And you know, we didn't live together, but you know, she'd spend tons of time with me and stay over. And, you know, we did a lot of the work together, or I had her support. But yeah, going into that project and not knowing the scale of what it was going to end up being, I mean, I wouldn't trade it for the world, but I wouldn't do it again. Yeah. Just because it was so intense. I mean, I had times where like the relationships I had to build with contractors, and like it was up to me to get certain things ready, because I was doing all the rough demo, the rough framing, all the stuff I could do, the insulating, the, you know, coordinating the plan and everybody, you know, and I was working full time. I don't know if I mentioned that, but I was working full time at the firm with a $50,000 job. Yeah, you know, and my interest only payments, you know, were, I think, about what my mortgage was. Yeah, just like betting on myself in terms of like what I can learn and getting out of it. Obviously I'm going to have this cool house, but it's not really going to like I didn't think it was going to set me up a crazy amount to like change my life or anything. Obviously it's just like one massive project. Yep. And yeah, so I mean, just getting through that, I like to say it this way. I was a boy with a girlfriend prior to doing that project, and I came out of that project a man, and we got engaged. Like, you know, I was ready to get engaged and buy the ring and all that stuff after the real estate.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
All right. I got a few questions I ask at the end of these podcasts. One is your biggest fear? You seem to be a risk taker, so.
Yeah, my biggest fear, I mean, the biggest fear is like disappointing people. I think that's probably a Midwest thing.
Yeah.
You don't want to disappoint people.
No.
I mean, the biggest thing now, doing a lot of like, deep diving into who I am and who I want to be and who I'm going to continue to be kind of thing. It's really just the fear that I won't be able to do the things that I imagine that I can do. That's my fear. It's like not being the person that I think I am.
Yep.
It's just like the tiny house, going from doing a woodworking to building a tiny house, doing like a real structure, right?
Yeah.
That went great. And going from like never doing real estate to doing the fourplex, which is like fast forward. I did the single family, right? I did a couple other projects, but it was like, I proved to myself that I can handle the late nights, the 80 to 100 hour weeks, the weekends working all the time, all the sweat, blood and tears in some cases a couple times.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. That's my biggest fear.
Yeah. No, it's a good one. What's the greatest book you've read?
Greatest book I've read.
Well, we all know you haven't read Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah, I have a bunch of titles in I do audiobooks and listen. So I had, oh man, I don't know. Millionaire Fastlane. That's my favorite.
Why?
He teaches like a different way of thinking about money. I think that's the biggest thing is, it made me look at money in a different way. Yeah. I'll have to review that again.
Right.
I almost want to read it again. It was so good. Just,
yeah, I usually do that too. Like the best books, you just end up reviewing them,
and on top of that, the other one that's really great is, Elon's book.
Oh,
he didn't write it, but I think I forget her name.
That, yeah.
But I was listening to that. I can remember when I was reading that book as I was doing rough framing on my unit number 3.
Okay.
At night, I'd listen to that thing. I mean, it's like a 10, 11 hour book. It's amazing. And we're talking about risk taking, right?
Oh,
and like going for it. That guy, that book's amazing. I mean, if you really want to get like, screw the motivational YouTube stuff and whatever, listen to that book.
Okay.
I think the listening is just like makes it that much better. Because you could be like doing the thing and listening to how Elon did the thing.
Yeah, dude, I get amped up. Like you listen to a good book. I haven't listened to that one, so I should add that to my list. But like, I always like compare my problems, and then I like think about Tesla. Like they're trying to build robots and like go to Mars and like have cars drive themselves without humans in them. Like,
and you have
I have
your
a Tesla.
Tesla.
Yeah, it's amazing to drive the thing every day. It's my favorite car, even when there's snowbanks out in North Dakota. It is just astonishing to me how far advanced. Like I'll get in our 21 Yukon Denali with 4,000 buttons everywhere, and it feels ancient. The car feels ancient compared. It's like
simplicity in the Tesla.
Yeah, it's like driving a 1980s Suburban versus a new. It's just like it doesn't even touch it.
Well, and in our world now, it's like Elon's the man. And so like, think about if Elon did not bet on himself with PayPal and like, they were like living on couches and working to build out like the early stages of PayPal or whatever it was called, before that had happened. I mean, it's just amazing to see. I mean, and that was inspiring to say, okay, yeah, it is worth pushing, pushing all the time and like taking those big steps.
Right.
I'll never be Elon Musk.
Right.
Like that is just, I mean,
could you imagine exiting a company for whatever PayPal was worth and then just dumping it all in Tesla to go to zero? You know what I mean? Like he was very close to broke a couple of times.
I believe if I can remember right, when he sold and made all of his money with PayPal, he went and found out how to buy rockets. Like he started SpaceX.
Who does that?
It was SpaceX first, I believe.
Right. Yeah.
But this, the book outlines all that. It's amazing to see how you can watch how he pivots. And that's something that I learned more than anything is like, you need to learn how to pivot. Like I had problems that would have bankrupted me. And I almost went I almost went under multiple times during my real estate endeavors. And it was only like a short year, like a year and a half kind of thing. Cause I did 2 projects.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like, if I didn't plan accordingly and make those decisions and preparations months ahead of time, it would have killed me 2 months later.
Yeah.
You just got to keep doing that, even though you don't want to face it. It's like eat the frog we talked about.
Yep. All right. Last question. What does unfollow the herd mean to you?
Unfollow the herd. I think it's really interesting that you called it that, because the herd is like the rat race to me. It's like 2 different ways to think about it. But yeah, if you like, you just listening to this podcast already and following you on LinkedIn, and I'd like to be that guy eventually as I keep posting more and encourage others, from like your early 20s, even it's crazy now, kids in high school are entrepreneurial. And I never had even thought of that when I was that young, all the way up to, now you have money but you're not in real estate or anything. So, unfollow the herd is like, it's not an age group per se. It could be literally anybody, but you do. I mean, once you unplug and you start seeing the world for what it could be and what it is too, that to me is what unfollow the herd means. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah. And not enough people view the world as it can be. They view all the risks that is associated with not just following the traditional path. I mean, that's a big thing. Well, how do people find you, Connor, with ER?
Yeah,
I think we got to make sure that
Connor with an E. Yeah. In preparation to this, in preparation to this podcast, my first podcast, let's say, and it is, I started a podcast, Connor with an E, on Spotify, where I'm going to be doing some short form stuff and getting into, Mark's inspired me as my coach and mentor to start doing some more video stuff and speaking. LinkedIn, I'm active 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. I'm posting once in the morning every day. And then also Mark's challenged me to do like a story on Instagram, and eventually I'd like to get into Reels, but that's where you can find me on Instagram, Connor C. Riley. On LinkedIn, I'm Connor Riley. And then on podcast, it's Connor with an E.
Dude, I love it. I'm interested to watch your path now. You've done some big things. Like I think social media is just a way to get your word out. It's the modern day. It's what your age group follows, how you follow people and get into their stories. So, welcome. Well, I guess we're wrapping this up. So, I appreciate you having you on, man. And we'll talk soon. I'm sure we're going to probably review this. I'd like to review this in like a year or two and just see where you're at, because you're at an interesting curve of your life. So appreciate it, man.
Yep. Thanks, Mark.
Bye.